Alright, so now that you have Git installed in your system, you'll have to do a few things to customize your Git environment. This only needs to be done once on any given computer. It will stick around for any future updates. Okay, so there's a tool called git config that lets you get or set configuration variables for Git. This config can be set for the entire system, for a specific user in the system, or for a particular project. So it's just a config file that gets saved based on the environment that you select. If you want to take a look at the configurations in your system, you can use the list flag after the git config command. So git config and the list flag. You can see all the Git configurations that are currently present in my system. Now we'll need to add our username and email address to this config. This information will be used anytime you commit something to a repository. So let's do that first. So I've set my username and email address to my git config. Now I've used the global keyword here because I would want all my projects to have this username and email address. At the same time, if some other user is using my system and wants to commit their changes, they can have a different username and email. If I would have used the system flag instead of the global flag, then it would have set these configurations for all the users in the system. So yeah, let's again verify whether our config items were added to the list. So git config followed by the list flag. Yeah, you can see here that I have the username and the email address added to the configuration. Now there are many commands in Git that we'll come across eventually, but if at all you need any information related to any Git command, there is a help flag available. After any command, just type -h, which stands for help, and it will provide all the details you need related to that command. Let's actually do this for the config command itself, so I'll clear this first. Git config and then -h. You'll see all these options that are available for the git config command. You can find the global flag that we just used, the system flag, the local flag. There are multiple flags here that we'll eventually look at in the future. But for now, remember that the -h flag will provide you with multiple options for any git command. Now, just like we were able to set config items, there's an option to unset them as well. You can use the unset flag in the git config command to remove any keys from your config list. So let's just remove the username that we just added. So git config global unset and user.name. Now if I list my configurations, you won't be able to find the username here. That's because I just removed it. So yeah, let me just add the username back. Alright, now that we have everything set up, let's create a project. We'll be working with a simple Node.js project throughout this series. The project actually is not going to have anything important because the focus of this series is purely Git and how to achieve version control. So yeah, I'm just putting it out there. Now let's initialize the project by typing in npm init y. This is going to create a basic node module with a package.json file which keeps track of all the information related to that module. I'm assuming you have Node and npm installed already in your system. If not, you can go to the Node.js website and get it installed. It's fairly straightforward. Now this is a regular Node.js project with no version control. You'll need to convert this into a Git repository to get version control capabilities. Now to convert this folder into a Git repository, we'll need to type in the git init command. This will create a new subdirectory called .git that contains all of your necessary repository files. It's hidden by default, so you won't be able to see it here. But if I open this file in the file explorer, yeah, you can see that there's a hidden folder called .git. We'll take a look at this Git folder later in the series. It's something that you don't need to know in depth and it could easily overcomplicate things. So for now, just keep in mind that this folder is what makes version control possible. On the left here, you will see the source control button. It's going to tell you what all changes you made to your files since the last commit. So it's comparing the current set of files to the last saved version, and it will show you the differences for each file. Currently, we only have one file, which is the package.json. If I open this, you will see the green section over here. The green section right here. This section tells you that new code was added. In the future, you might come across a red section as well. The red section basically tells you that the code was removed. Now let's save this version of our code to the repository. Before that, actually let's understand the different states of a file in Git. So every file in your working folder will either be tracked or untracked by Git. Initially, if you have created a Git repository locally, all the files in that repository will be untracked. Only when you commit those files will they start being tracked by Git. So let's understand the basic flow of working with Git. In the beginning, you have untracked files. To track these files, you need to stage them. Staging means marking specific files so that Git can track them for the next commit. So you're basically telling Git that mark this specific file. I'll be saving this file in the next version. I'll be committing this file to the repository. So remember, anytime you want to commit a file to the repository, you'll need to add the file to the staging area first. Alright, once you have staged the file, the next action is to commit it to the repository. And once you have committed the file to the repository, it's saved as a snapshot. Now let's say you make a change to this file again after the commit. If you want to commit this new version of the file with that specific change, you'll have to again stage it. Only after that you can commit it to the repository. So for now, remember that you need to stage a file every time you want to commit it to the repository or even track a file that was previously untracked. The staging command, which is git add, is a multi-purpose command. It's not really that confusing when you start working with it, so let's do that. Actually, let's run the git status command first. It will show you the current state of your working directory and the staging area. So git status. You see this message which tells you that you have untracked files. In order to let Git know that these files need to be tracked, we'll have to stage them. So I'll type git add followed by the name of the file, package.json. Now again, if I type in git status, you'll see that the file is added to the staging area and it's ready to be committed. Only once it's committed will it be tracked by Git. So committing a file to the repository is the most crucial action, and without that, you essentially don't have version control. Just by adding files to the staging area, you are not achieving anything. So let's commit the file. Git commit. With every commit, you need to attach a short description with the details of the commit. Not only is it a mandatory step, but by adding a message to every Git commit, it will be easier for you to debug in the future if at all you come across an issue with a particular file. And the way you add a message to the git commit command is by adding the m flag followed by the message. So I'll just type in initial commit and press enter. You'll see that one file was changed. There were 12 insertions to that file and a new file was created in the repository. Now again, I'll type the git status command. And it says that the working tree is clean, which means that it is in parity with the Git repository. So we have created a file, added the file to the staging area to get it tracked by Git, and then committed the file to the repository. You'll be reiterating these three actions thousands of times, so do not worry if you find this complicated. Now if I modify this file again, I'll need to save it again to the Git repository. So I'll go to the package.json file. Instead of Git, I'll just add a -1 here. So I am making a change to the package.json file now. I'll save it. In the source control tab, you'll find that exact change here. Now if I do git status again, it won't say that my file is untracked like it did the last time. We did commit the file, right? So Git now is tracking the file. It says that there are changes that need to be committed. So to commit this new change, you'll need to stage it first. So let's do that. Git add package.json. And after that, we'll commit it with an appropriate message. So git commit -m. And we just made our second commit. You can also use the git log command to see the history of commits. So yeah, you can see both the commits here with their respective commit messages. Now if I add one more file to this project, let me do that. Script.js. It will again tell me that there are untracked files. So git status. You can see that there's one new untracked file here, script.js. The reason this is an untracked file is because the file is completely new and it was not part of the old commit. So anytime you have a new file, it's going to be untracked. The process of getting an untracked file tracked by Git, or the process of staging an older file with changes, is essentially the same. So you don't have to worry about it. You can think of git add command as adding specific content to the next commit. Think of it that way. It could be a file which is already tracked but has been modified, or it could be a completely new file. Both of these scenarios will be solved by git add. Now there are some files that you don't want Git to worry about. They are not supposed to be tracked. Actually, they are not even supposed to be shown as untracked. For example, you would not want to track a node library. It can be reproduced by referring to the package.json anyway, so it doesn't make sense for us to save a version of those files in our repository. It's just a waste of space. You can ignore such files using a gitignore file. So to test that, let's actually first install an npm package. We'll go for Express. So npm install Express. Yeah, so this has been installed and you can see that there are so many new files in the source control tab here. All these files are part of the Express library. If you type git status, you'll find the node modules file in the untracked files section. To ignore this folder, we'll add a new file called gitignore. So let me do that. .gitignore. And inside this file, you need to pass a pattern matching the files that you want to be ignored. In our case, we don't need the node modules folder. So I'll add them here, node_modules. And I'll say this. Now you can see that the source control tab again shows only 4 files, which are the files that we actually want Git to be bothered with. We don't really care about the node modules folder, so we have completely ignored it. Now finally, if you want to remove a file from your Git repository, you need to follow some steps. You can't just simply remove a file from your working directory here. Actually, before even doing that, let me just commit these files here. So there's a trick that I forgot to mention. If you want to add multiple files to the staging area, you can use git add followed by a period. So it's going to add all these files together in the staging area. You don't have to individually stage them. After that, I'll just commit. Right, so we were planning to remove a file from the repository. We can't just simply remove it from a working directory here because the file is still going to be part of the Git repository. So if I delete this, in the source control tab, you will see one change here. If I do git status, you will see that the file is in the changes not staged for commit section. That means it has not been removed from the Git repository yet. So instead, what we'll do is we'll use the git rm command. So git rm. This command removes your file from the staging area. So it's basically untracking the file, and it will also remove it from your working directory if you still have it there. In our case, we didn't have it there because we had manually deleted the script file. But now using the git rm command, it's removed from the staging area. But again, you'll need to commit this action because everything works only after you commit. So let's do that. Git commit now the file will be gone and it is no longer being tracked. So it's not even part of the Git repository now. And yeah, that should be enough information for you to get started. This is probably the most important video in the series because the commands covered here are basically what you're going to work with for the most part. There are some additional concepts that we'll be looking at later, but this is the core of what you'll be doing when it comes to version control. If you have any doubts or suggestions, do let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.